What did he just do? That is a very, very good point. Oh my. Generic Control and the goes here, back with another Fate reaction. Today we're doing the lore of Fate Stay Night Part 1, the first 4 Grail Wars by Otaku Daikun. I'm sure I absolutely butchered that. I've never seen anything by this channel before. I have no idea how they do their videos, but this video was highly requested on one of my Gilgamesh videos talking about the Fate series, which started because I started reacting to Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works Abridged, which is a place on my channel if you want to see my reaction. Now I'll leave it right up there, also link down below in the description. But I just watched another Gilgamesh video on Fire Punch that comes out the same day this does, but Otaku Daikun should be getting close to 100,000 subscribers, so if you enjoyed this video, you should definitely click the first link down below in the description and go watch the original and subscribe to Otaku Daikun, and maybe check some of the other videos, because I don't know what they all have, but a lot of people were really excited and really wanted me to watch this. I know it's been a couple months since they mentioned that I should do this, but I went back and looked and I was like, I want to learn more about Fate. I know they're about to come out with a new episode of The Abridged in January, which I will of course react to as well. I hope you are subscribed to not miss future videos. Also shout out to the patrons, because they allow me to do random videos like this, and they get the videos a day early. $3 a month get you all my reaction videos a day early. I'm completely against paywalls because I'm here to make you smile, not make you pay. I read all your comments, whether you're a patron or not, whether you're subscribed or not, so definitely leave them down below. But let's go ahead and jump into this long video. All right, let's do it. Okay, that's Otaku Daikun, or I don't know. I've never seen anything from this channel before. They get close to 100,000 subscribers though, so if you like this video, go subscribe to them. First link down below in the description.
Hello and welcome to Otaku Daikun. This episode is shaping
I actually said it right.
Favorites. If you've been following my videos, you'll know how much I love Saber,
Baber,
Fate Stay Night, pretty much everything Fate.
I've only seen the abridged
videos
of
reviewing each and every relevant piece of Fate media, but I think I've come up with a much more useful and intriguing idea to speak to from the ground up, the lore in Fate, and how all the pieces fit together.
The Gilgamesh video.
As such, I won't necessarily be speaking about any one work or adaptation.
Talk about the moon.
Canon of the universe as a whole. We'll be zooming in and out of the entire picture to address individual ideas and their relevance to the lore.
Oh god.
If you insist on knowing my review recommendation, I'd say that the ufotable adaptations of Fate Zero and Unlimited Blade Works are absolutely legendary.
A lot of people like Blade Works.
Point, you should watch them both
for some reason.
order.
They didn't win my last anime poll.
2006 anime created by Studio Dean. For all
Never heard
the
that
this particular adaptation gets, it's still what got me into it all, and I hold it dear to my heart. To that end, any other work, besides maybe Prisma Ilia, can be recommended as amazing. Even if you think it's not your thing,
those guns?
Give it a shot to see for yourself, as the Fate series certainly earns its reputation.
Oh
From
great, a beach episode.
I'll be spoiling the series like crazy.
Oh.
But only in an effort to reveal more about the universe than one might get from a single watching.
I've watched the
getting
videos.
Your feet wet first, then coming back to this video to expand your knowledge.
I did the abridged series.
I won't lie, I'm quite indebted to the Type Moon Wikia and all of its contributors for creating a thorough encyclopedia of the franchise. But my video will be different in that I'll be giving a no bullshit, in a nutshell, layman's terms explanation of it all.
Okay.
Regardless, it's still pretty geeky. So let us commence. The first thing to reveal here is that the Fate series is part of an even larger canonical universe.
Is that the assassin teacher dude?
As the Nasu-verse, named after the Type Moon writer Kinoko Nasu. It includes other works such as Tsukihime and Kata no Kyokai.
Those are words I would not be able to pronounce.
Characters like Saber and Arcoade fighting each other, and it wouldn't be outside the bounds of their universe.
Yeah, no.
Let's get basic. What the hell is Fate?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Company Type Moon created the visual novel Fate Stay Night in 2004.
Really?
A year later, they released a second visual novel, Fate Hollow Ataraxia. Another year later came a prequel,
Motorcycles,
a novel called Fate Zero. This is the main canon of the franchise.
Yeah.
But there have been many spin-offs to come out ever since. These include the light novel Fate Apocrypha, the mobile game Fate Grand Order, the video game series Fate Extra,
there's so many,
the comedic
there's so many pieces,
Carnival Phantasm, and the magical girl story Fate Collide Liner Prisma Ilia.
That's a
mouthful.
mouthful.
For the sake of this video, I'll only talk about the main trilogy, but many of its ideas and themes carry directly into its expanded universe.
Very
expanded.
The only two
in the main trilogy to get adapted thus far have been Fate Zero and Stay Night, combining to have 3 anime series and an animated movie between them, with another ufotable film in production for 2017. The surface
I,
level premise
yeah, it definitely
of
came
Stay
out.
Night
I think people
is
mentioned that in the
mages
Giga video.
engage in a battle called the Holy Grail War, in which 7
Team
mages
deathmatch?
summon epic heroes to their side to fight for the opportunity to have the Holy Grail grant the winner's wishes. As such, one of its main appeals is the actual competition and the fighting between legendary heroes of the past,
Most of which
living
I
up to their myths
did not know like
quite
any of them.
spectacularly in a modern setting. You'll notice quite quickly that there's way more than that beneath the surface, and I plan to get to the bottom of it all for you.
This turned into an
Takes
entire
place in a world
series,
where
I'm pretty
magic,
sure.
monsters, miracles, and the like actually exist. In fact, before the modern era,
Pegasus?
there was the Age of Gods,
Oh.
in which godlike beings formed from human worship and greatly influenced the world around them.
Where'd they
During
go?
this time, beings like Medusa or the Lady of the Lake actually embodied
Lady
the
of the
legends
Lake?
that surround them today.
What's that?
The gods weakened their influence, such that the modern era no longer notices or knows about them. Hence, they've turned to myth. Regardless of the time, however,
Wow.
there
You
have
got
been
demoted
practitioners
from
of
god to
magecraft
myth.
who strive to make the impossible possible by channeling mana within themselves to shape their
Mana
surroundings.
transfers.
Let's zoom way, way out to examine the foundation of Fate's world. There exists in the Fate universe a metaphysical place known as Akasha, the root of all existence. The
Oh,
root
yeah.
is where all souls originate from and return to. It also serves as a record of all past, present, and future events occurring in the infinite number of possible realities. Calling it the core of the universe is fairly accurate,
Oh.
if not an understatement.
Oh.
This is significant because reaching the root
How do
is
I
the
break
pinnacle
it?
ambition for a magus. Traditionally, magi covet the root, much the same way as Buddhists strive to reach nirvana. Then there's the earth
Oh.
and development of
Nirvana
mankind,
is more than
which has
a
been
band.
guided by 2 different forces, known collectively as the deterrent force. Gaia, the will of the planet to survive, and Alaya, the will of humanity to avoid extinction, act naturally to steer the fate of the earth and its inhabitants. When the earth or humanity are
What is
in
that a
danger,
picture of?
the deterrent force responds to quell the threat in varying ways. This becomes relevant to fate because the deterrent force often kicks in to prevent individuals from reaching the root. The sheer amount of power it can bestow is deemed by the planet itself to be too dangerous for mortal minds.
Oh, lovely.
Alas, in order to reach the root, a magus must somehow bypass the deterrent force. If the Fate universe were a game of Super Mario,
Never played
then Mario
Super
would
Mario.
be a magus. Reaching the princess would be the root, and all the Goombas, Koopas, bottomless pits, fireballs, that little shit Lakitu,
Who?
and Bowser himself would all be the deterrent force. One of the many ways mages came up with to reach the root was a ritual called Heaven's Feel. It was originally founded by the great mage families of Tosaka, Matou, and
Tosaka.
Einsberg in the year 1800.
And the Einsberg.
Once a method to reach Akasha was created, the families invited 4 other magi to participate, bringing the total to 7. Generally speaking, the ritual involves 7 magi, summoning 7 servants. Originally, by gathering the servants into the Grail and returning them to the root together, they would form a pathway directly to the root. This required all 7 servants to be defeated,
Yeah, that sounds...
gathering their mana into what they would call the Lesser Grail, which is actually nothing more than a golden vessel for mana. The real goal is
Okay.
to use that golden cup to summon the Greater Grail, literal hole leading to Akasha. The ritual was ultimately a failure, as the families wound up fighting amongst each other rather than cooperating.
Yeah.
This
Greedy!
was the first Holy Grail War. The
Yeah,
way
and there
the
was like a
Grail
big time
constructed
jump between them.
allowed it to manifest recurrently when sufficient mana had been gathered, meaning that the ritual would recur throughout history. 60 years later, the ritual itself became nothing more than a competition between mages to have their wishes granted by using the gathered mana from defeated servants to cause a miracle. The part about
Makes
reaching
sense.
Akasha really took a back seat in favor of the Battle Royale. Fast forward to the
Team Deathmatch?
1930s, when a third Holy Grail War took place.
The
This one was
1930s?
special, however, namely because the Einsbergs interfered with their summoning ritual. Attempting to gain an edge on the competition, they summoned a Zoroastrian deity known
Who
as
is that?
Angra Mainyu.
Never heard of him.
Supposedly, Angra Mainyu was a simple villager. To take the guilt of being evil and doing evil things off of themselves, the villagers declared him to be the source of all evil, blaming him for all of their evils.
Wow, scapegoat.
They tortured him for all his life, making an ordinary person carry out the burden of everyone else's sins.
That's not
To that end,
fair.
Angra Mainyu was filled with hatred for the world.
Makes sense.
Once he was defeated early in the Third Grail War, he became one with the Grail, but wound up corrupting it from the inside.
How?
From then on, the Grail would be
what's going on with
capable
your
of
eyes?
summoning anti-heroes and would only grant wishes through destruction and despair. Yet again, there was no clear winner to the Grail Wars. The fourth Holy
No
Grail
one wins
War,
it.
depicted in Fate Zero, began in the 1990s.
Oh,
And by this
that's
time,
when I was born.
the Mages Association worked in conjunction with the Church to instill various rules and supervision over the Grail
So
War's
somebody can
chaos.
actually win.
The overseer of the war would be Rise Kotomine. Despite being tasked with maintaining fairness and
Which is
secrecy
when the
within
church
the
is
war,
in the
he
abridged.
teamed up with Tokiomi Tosaka to essentially rig the
Tosaka.
competition. It's also worth noting that in over 150 years, the three dominant Magus families really changed, becoming shells of their former selves.
Makes sense.
This is especially
because they've been
true
fighting
for
each
the
other.
Matos, whose progeny now struggled with forming magic circuits. As such, the Matou were hardly able to pass on their magic crest, the inscribed compilation of a family's knowledge and experiences as a mage family. By now, the goal of reaching the root was really only a concern to the Tosaka family. This is the first chronological moment we get to see an actual Grail War. When the Grail begins to emerge, it chooses 7 magi to compete as masters,
Kind of crazy
bestowing
that it just
upon
gets to
them
choose
3
like
command
that.
seals apiece. They tend to manifest on the hand and arm in the shape of a tattoo of sorts. It appears the Grail always chooses a master from each of the 3 families, but the other 4 are chosen
random.
according to the Grail's will. Starting
Why
with
can the
prominent
Grail
magi,
can think on its own?
and then filling the ranks more randomly when fewer options are present. This time round,
Getting picked
the
last in
masters are as
dodgeball.
follows. Kiritsugu Emiya, representing the Ainsburns. Tokiomi Tosaka of the Tosaka lineage. Karia Matou, representing the Matou family. The young student Waver
Matou.
Velvet. His teacher, Kenneth Archibald. Kirei Kotomine of the church. And Ryunosuke Uryu, a non-magus who coincidentally summoned his own servant.
Wait,
take a look at
what?
them
He's
soon,
on mage and he
But for
summoned his
now,
own
we'll look
servant?
over the actual
How?
summoning ritual. Generally, when summoning an epic hero for a servant, the Grail tends to select servant-master pairs that share similar traits. This is how Ryunosuke was able to summon Bluebeard. The two of them share a taste for
Bluebeard?
human
Oh.
suffering and despair. However, by using a catalyst during the process, it's possible to summon a specific servant over all others.
Oh, so
We
you
see
can
this
actually
when
kind of
Kiritsugu
pick.
literally uses King Arthur's scabbard, Avalon, to summon the king herself.
The king herself.
Arya,
That's a
thanks
sentence.
to Zokin's advice,
that
alters the
Gilgamesh?
ritual to intentionally summon a berserker-class servant.
Oh.
Essentially, masters and servants are not paired up randomly or without reason. Now, I mentioned classes. Turns out that the servants of any Grail War fall into one of 7 different classes
Yeah, there's one of
that
each.
influence their abilities.
Now I was just trying to figure out who
There
the other ones are.
sabers, who excel in close quarters combat, archers, who specialize in ranged warfare, riders, who are known for their unique mounts or vehicles, casters, who are often magi themselves,
And
berserkers, who sacrifice their rationality for raw power,
Floor
lancers,
it.
who fight with thrusting weapons, and assassins, who specialize in stealth and quick
which makes
killing.
sense. It's pretty standard.
Some
You
epic
ever
heroes
played a
can be
video
summoned
game
into
ever?
different roles based on their myriad talents. But others, like Arturia Pendragon, are almost always summoned into the same class due to their specialties. The command seals given to the competing mages serve as an emblem of the Master-Servant Pact, but they also have 2 functions. The first, most common use, is to use one of the 3 command spells to force one's servant to obey an order. The
They
more
should already
specific,
do that
the more
regardless.
successful the seal will be. The other, less conventional use is to sacrifice one's command seal in order to boost the servant's abilities.
Oh.
Now, Kiritsugu Emiya is more or less the protagonist of Fate
Emiya,
Zero.
of course, always.
As a child, his father was aiming to research immortality when
Why?
things went awry and their village became contaminated by ghouls.
Oh,
Upon discovering that his own father had caused such chaos knowingly,
but he caused
Kiritsugu
schools.
killed his father and became an apprentice to his new mentor, Natalia. The two worked as mercenaries, using espionage, tactical advantage, and weapons tech in order to hunt criminally declared mages.
That
Even as a child,
that took a turn.
Kiritsugu
That took a
longed to
big
rid
turn.
The world of
Ghouls
suffering
to
and evil,
its
but
father.
learned through his apprenticeship that achieving world peace was impossible without a miracle. He learned that saving someone often came at the cost of killing others. He adopted a very utilitarian form of justice to sacrifice the few for the sake of the many. To avoid such sacrifice, he decided to actually strive for a miracle. As such, he offered his talents to the Ainsburn family to not only win
the
the Grail,
Ainsburns.
but to use his wish to force world peace.
Wow.
The Einsburn family specialized in the creation of homunculi, artificial humans. They normally used their magic to create a vessel for the Grail.
Oh god, and the daughter or whatever.
This time, they stepped up their game by designing a conscious homunculus capable of protecting itself from the danger until it could be sacrificed to become the Grail's vessel. This homunculus was Irisfeel. For her, it's important to realize that Einsburn homunculi age quite differently. When she was first created, she was essentially a mindless doll. In fact, most of what she knows is due to interacting with and learning from Kiritsugu. Ultimately, the two fell in love despite the harsh truth
she's an homunculi.
would one day be sacrificed to become the Lesser Grail.
Oh no, not even the upper, not even the better Grail.
Half human, half homunculus daughter to give them hope for the future. This child, Emiya, would be able to live beyond her mother, in part so that Kiritsugu wouldn't be completely alone.
Well, that's a little
thing that makes
crazy.
Kiritsugu so
There's
fascinating
a gun, sniper
is his
rifle.
approach to combat. He has the nickname Mage Killer, and rightly so. While definitely a magus himself, he chooses to fight with modern weaponry.
Nice.
Precisely because most mages underestimate non-magical technology. This is evident when Kenneth constructs an articulate labyrinth of magical traps to keep out invaders in his hotel, only to have his plan fall apart when Kiritsugu blows up the entire building instead. That isn't to say he doesn't use magic, though. When in real danger, Kiritsugu can use his mana to slow or accelerate his own internal
I was about to say, is that breach
giving him
load?
the advantage
But
of
it's a
speed
pistol.
in combat, as well as the ability to slow down his heart to avoid detection.
Oh,
The most
I thought he was going to
dangerous
do like
weapon in his
snipers.
arsenal, however, is the origin bullet. Now, the idea of an origin is incredibly important to certain parts of the Fifth universe.
Non-origin bullets.
Turns out that every living being has what's called an origin, the aspect that slipped out of the root and took material form.
Oh.
Origins
like a soul?
all carry with them certain
Kind of?
traits or defining characteristics, often being concepts or ideas. Think of an origin as an intrinsic feature buried within each living entity. Depending on the individual, one's origin can greatly influence one's behavior or abilities, or remain buried. Kiritsugu,
Or maybe
for
it's like a
instance,
zodiac
is
sign.
the origin of severing and binding. It's a basic concept that, when applied correctly, can be very significant. His origin bullets are bullets made from parts of his ribs, each containing a small part of his soul. Should a magus get hit with one of these bullets, especially when utilizing their magic, the bullet will sever and reconstruct their magic circuits, such that they'll never function properly again. He uses one of these limited bullets to permanently cripple Kenneth during the war. It's obvious by now that Kiritsugu isn't a conventional magus.
Dude, that's a
and in return,
crazy
does
weapon.
not function as a traditional master during the war. Preferring espionage and tactical surveillance to direct confrontation, Kiritsugu allows Irisfeel to provide their servant with necessary support, leading masters in the war to think that Irisfeel is Saber's master, when her actual master lurks in the shadows.
Oh,
Another thing
wait,
to note
is that
about
something that happens
Kiritsugu
in
is his relationship
Blade
with
Works?
Maya,
Unlimited Blade
his
Works?
accomplice. Turns out he made her into his apprentice when she was younger, and they apparently share a lustful bond. It seems Irisfeel is okay with this, understanding that, for as much as he loves her, he is racked with grief that Maya helps him manage. Given his goal of world peace,
wild.
it's no wonder that Kiritsugu would covet a miracle from the Grail. But if you recall, the Grail had been horribly corrupted by Angra Mainyu.
So it can
When
only be used
Kiritsugu
for
makes
destruction and
contact with
stuff.
the Grail, it puts his methods into question, presenting him a dilemma between two boats. In the event that only one boat could survive,
Oh no.
Kiritsugu would always choose the boat with the most people. However, if the surviving boat were to split up and recreate the dilemma, his choice would remain the same. Eventually, Kiritsugu would have to allow the vast majority to die in favor of saving the few. Essentially, the Grail would not be able to force world peace, especially not while corrupted.
Oh no.
Kiritsugu
Wait a
himself could not imagine a method to create that peace. Discovering the Grail's corruption and dangerous potential,
What did he just
orders
do?
his servant to destroy it. Of course, his servant is none other than King Arthur, summoned into the Saber class. Kiritsugu was provided Excalibur's scabbard, Avalon, as a catalyst for the summoning. When they first met, Kiritsugu had qualms with the fact that the legendary King of Knights was actually a woman named Artoria Pendragon.
Apparently.
Turns out, they would never get along. For a more
Really?
detailed analysis of
How
her
can you not get along with Baber?
check out my Female Anime Warriors episode.
That sounds
In
like
this
an interesting
We'll
video.
be addressing the strange implications of a female Arthur. Perhaps the first question most people wonder is, if Saber's a girl, what was the point of Guinevere? Weren't they married?
Who's
It
Guinevere?
seems Saber always ruled the kingdom.
I'm not
as though
very
she were
familiar
a
with
man,
King Arthur
and her
at
sex
all.
was irrelevant. For political reasons, Saber and Guinevere married as a formal gesture only. Guinevere and her best knight Lancelot were in love and having an affair. She knew of this and allowed it to be until the affair went public. And to preserve order, Artoria had Guinevere executed. The other question remains, what of Mordred, Arthur's illegitimate child? According to Fate lore,
that existed.
due to being unable to produce an heir, Merlin used magecraft to grant Artoria the ability to release sperm. I'm gonna guess Merlin made her into a temporary futanari. During this time, her sister, Morgan Le Fay, enchanted her and took some of that saber sperm.
Enchanted her.
Morgan used it to impregnate herself, giving birth to Mordred, a near identical clone of Artoria.
Oh, that's...
From a history of rejection,
Incest? Is
being
it?
treated unworthy to inherit the throne, Mordred turned against Artoria, and the two of them fought in the Battle of Camlann. While Artoria won, killing Mordred, she was left with a fatal wound that later took her life.
Oh, that's not
Everything
good.
else falls snugly into place, regardless of the king's sex. After being raised by Merlin in
guess
place of her
that
father, Uther
pieces things
Pendragon,
together.
Artoria was the one to become king by drawing Caliburn, the sword and the
I
stone.
thought it was Excalibur.
From that day forth, she would
I
no
know about
longer
Excalibur,
age.
but...
She was later bestowed Excalibur and Avalon from the Lady of the Lake.
No idea who
Avalon's
Lady of the Lake
blessing
is.
made Artoria more or less invincible during most of her battles. The only reason Mordred's blade caused her death was because Avalon had been stolen prior to battle. On her deathbed, Saber regretted having supposedly failed as a king, and pledged herself to the world as a heroic spirit in order to seek the Grail and redo
God.
her days
Tired.
as king.
Very tired.
Because she was raised as a knight, not a woman, Saber is very gentlemanly toward Irisville.
Aw.
Oh yeah, and remember
Faber.
Avalon? When the Einsburns found and used it to summon Saber specifically, Kiritsugu decided to make use of it rather than give it back to Saber. He stored Avalon's essence in Irisville to keep her protected throughout most of the war.
You can stop
As
using
Irie
her like a
began to
backpack.
manifest into the Grail, Kiritsugu then kept Avalon for himself. As the Grail War progressed, Irie began to lose strength in her body. She would soon become the Grail's vessel.
Oh.
Around this time,
That's
Kiritsugu
sad.
had Irie and Saber move to a large Japanese-style estate for the remainder of the war. On that estate was a small shed in which Irie had Saber
Wow, that
carve
shed
a
looks
magic
just
circle
like
for her workshop.
Emiya's.
This will be relevant later. It's time to talk about Kirei Kotomine. I've already said plenty about him via my disturbing anime villains episode, but there are some interesting things to note beyond his villainy.
Oh, he's the church
Right
dude,
from the
isn't he?
get-go, Kirei and Kiritsugu are shown to be rivals, as they each recognize the other as the most formidable opponent in the Grail War.
They have
This is
guns.
likely because both of them function as mage killers in their own right.
Oh, or not.
Kiritsugu offering targets declared by the Mages Association, and Kirei serving as an executioner for the church. While he supposedly
Alexander
practiced righteousness
Anderson.
under his father, and for the church, he's always had a much darker side that later reaches the surface. When I first watched Fate Zero, I thought Kirei was a frickin' overpowered cheater. We see him literally taking bullets and not dying. The impacts just glancing off. This is because his combat style involves channeling mana within himself to enhance his physical capabilities. From the start of the war, Tokiomi Tosaka and Rise Kotomine were planning on cheating, justified under the idea that the Tosaka family was the only one still coveting the Grail for its original purpose.
Oh.
They prepped Kirei to become a master, and intended to have him secretly work for Tosaka to gain an advantage in the war.
Wow.
It's fortunate then
That's crazy
that
you
Kirei
could
would
cheat
summon a servant
something
of the
like
assassin
this.
class. This servant, the 100-faced Hassan, took advantage
Never
of his
heard of it.
multiple personality disorder to kill more efficiently. As a heroic spirit, this manifests in the form of having multiple versions of himself. A small army, if you will.
So you have to
Kirei
kill
takes
all of them, I'm
advantage
guessing.
this to stage his servant's defeat, when in actuality, only one of his servant's many forms was killed. He pretends he's out of
Oh.
the competition and seeks refuge
Is that
in
like
the church
Gilgamesh
his
with
father,
the
secretly
weapons?
helping Tokiomi from the shadows. Why help Tokiomi? We've already established that, of all the original mage families conducting Heaven's Feel, only the Tosakas still care about reaching the root. When Tokiomi summons Gilgamesh into the archer class,
there's
they
Gilgamesh.
do not get along well at all. Gilgamesh is a man
I
of
had
worldly
no idea who
desire,
Gilgamesh was until
basking in the material world
abridged.
he treats like his own property. As such, he shows little to no interest in the root or anything immaterial. He finds Tokiomi to be incredibly boring because of it. This is
Sounds
partially
like
why
him.
Gilgamesh ultimately convinces Kirei to murder Tokiomi and form a pact with him instead. Ah, Gilgamesh, you twisted bastard.
Love it. I
In his
love it.
heyday,
Love
he was known as
Gilgamesh.
the king of heroes and was said to have owned everything on the planet. This is an attitude he carries to this day. He treats
So
all
cool.
beings other than himself lesser and inferior, but among them he respects his more valuable subjects. At first, he feels he has everything he wants.
I can't wait
and
for
fights
next episode
the
to
Grail
get
only
bridged.
to keep others from defiling what is already his. The exception to this is Saber, who he begins to desire as his wife, hoping
Wait,
to subjugate her.
Gilgamesh
as well.
and Baber?
Most people who encounter him in the Grail War are surprised by his awesome abilities.
Uh-huh.
For epic heroes participating as servants in the war, each
His
one has
noble
what's called a
phantasm.
noble phantasm, which is more or less a special attack
And
or
he
unique
has
ability
3 of them?
tied to their
Kind
legend.
of?
Gilgamesh, however, appears to have far more than one noble phantasm, possessing thousands of blades he can launch or
Every
wield at
weapon.
will. It seems like he's cheating the system, but he's really exploiting a loophole of sorts.
Oh god, of course.
Gilgamesh's noble phantasm is not any one item, but rather his entire collection that he accesses via the Gate of Babylon. Seems OP.
He's
and
so
it is,
cool.
like wishing on a genie for more than 3 wishes.
First
Perhaps
wish,
the 2
triple
most
world
powerful
hunger.
items in his collection are the Chains of Heaven and Ea.
Wow.
The Chains of Heaven.
I've seen
known
Chains
as
of Heaven.
Enkidu,
Oh, this,
are
yep.
capable of binding even the
That's
strongest
from
of
Unlimited
servants,
Blade Works.
such as Iskander the Great and Hercules, rendering them virtually defenseless. Ea is a special sword only he can use, and has
Have I
never
seen
been
that
passed
one?
down to any other heroes. With it, he can use Enuma Elish, the single most powerful skill in his arsenal, which tears up the fabric of reality to destroy worlds.
It can destroy
He
worlds?
only uses it on those he considers to be truly worthy of its glory. Generally, Gilgamesh's biggest weakness is his own hubris.
He's fine.
This bit's crazy, but it turns out
Wait, they have a
Gilga
jet?
even has his own airship inside the Gate of
That's
Babylon.
cool. Where'd that
He
come
only
from?
uses it once, but its name is Vimana.
How?
An ancient flying vehicle that is, of course, as gold as everything else he adorns himself with.
Gold?
love gold.
My next topic deals with
What
the
was that a
Matou
reference
family.
to?
I mentioned before that the Matou bloodline was running dry with capable
It
mages.
was running dry.
As such, they had no heir who could actually compete in the Fourth Grail War. Turns out that the Tosaka family had not 1, but 2 candidates for heir, Rin and Sakura. Normally,
Oh,
Amaga's family
Sakura.
would only pass on their magic crest to 1 heir, so Tokiomi found it convenient to allow the Matou family to adopt Sakura. He separated his 2 daughters, choosing only to keep Rin as his disciple.
Rin.
Zoken Matou, the elder of the Matou family, would prepare Sakura to be the next successor in hopes of winning
Not sure
the
how you
next
do that.
Grail
Are those
War.
bugs?
This is incredibly tragic, as the Matos condition their mage candidates through the use of crest worms that incubate in one's body and consume magical energy.
What?
Sakura winds up having these creepy-ass things incubate her body for 11 years. In hopes of preventing this, Kari Amato, who had left the family in disgust despite being capable of performing as a magus, pleaded to Zoken to halt Sakura's conditioning by joining the Grail War himself. Zoken agrees to this and begins forcibly preparing Karia with crest
I think
worms
Sakura is
instead,
voiced by Bubble
doing a bit
Monkeys,
of a rush job
which
to
is
prep him
crazy.
for the Fourth War. This drastically reduces Karia's lifespan and causes him immense pain.
It's fine.
He feels it's worth it, however, as he's deeply in love with,
Hopefully the music's not
one-sidedly,
copywritten.
Tokiomi's wife, Aoi.
He's in love
As
with
such,
another
he
dude's
wishes to
wife?
protect Sakura, as Aoi worries for her own daughter. He dreams of uniting the sisters and earning Aoi's affection. Clearly, this never comes to pass. Karia's berserker servant is actually Lancelot, who's consumed by rage
Okay.
after betraying Artoria in
That's-
hopes of
that's
saving
Lancelot?
Guinevere from her execution. Essentially, Lancelot blames himself for Artoria's
Why does he look like that?
downfall, and cannot forgive himself because Artoria did not blame or punish him. On the topic of magic bloodlines, we have Waver Velvet, who studied magecraft at the
That's
Clock
a-
Tower.
what is that
despite
name?
having come from a fairly weak mage lineage. Regardless, he discovered that a mage's potential wasn't completely determined by bloodline, and one's skill could be improved through diligent effort. Wanting to prove himself as a magus, he stole his professor Cainith's catalyst and summoned Iskander. Iskander is interesting,
Iskander.
and that he
I
shows
don't
us
know
how
who that
history
is.
books may not be as accurate as we'd expect them to be. His legends state him to be a short man, whereas his actual build is quite stocky
I
and
don't know.
robust.
I don't know who that is.
Nevertheless, He and Waver make a good team because Iskander views everyone small in comparison to the entire planet. He's also the first servant to introduce us to the idea of a reality marble, a unique type of noble phantasm
the marbles.
that
Don't talk
creates
about
an
marbles.
alternate
We haven't
dimensional
mentioned the
stage
moon
of
yet.
sorts. Again, catered to the hero's legend. In Iskander's case, we have the Ionian Hetairoi, a noble phantasm that sends his opponents and himself to a vast desert wherein Iskander can command his great army.
Oh,
I've already covered these guys in my villains episode, but we have Ryunosuke and Castor. Castor's true identity is Gilgamesh, commonly known as Bluebeard, a French nobleman who served under Jeanne d'Arc. Tormented by her death, he began practicing magecraft,
apparently Paper is not Jeanne
specifically the
d'Arc.
summoning of demons, in an effort to
Joan of
prove
Arc.
that God does not exist, else Jeanne would have survived. He committed countless atrocities, seeking divine punishment he knew would not come. In the end, he was executed.
Why does he
not
look
due to
like
his
that,
sins, but in the interest
What's
of
his
men
eyes?
coveting his property. As such, he continues his sins during his servitude in the Fourth Grail War, until encountering Artoria, who he mistakes to be Jeanne d'Arc.
Wait,
Ryunosuke's
what? He
pretty
actually
simple.
thought Paper was
A twisted
Joan of
little
Arc?
shit who loves murder and internal organs.
Oh,
He
that's...
gets all creative with it.
Ooh, through the
and
wrist?
gets along with Castor as a result. He winds up giving Castor a new perspective on divinity, that God exists, but loves all things both sacred and sinful. Both are forms of worship. They use this to justify all of their horrible acts.
Slanesh?
Next on our list, we have Cainith and Lancer. Since Waver stole his original catalyst, Cainith had to summon a different servant, which wound up being Diarmid, a loyal knight of Fianna.
Who?
He was blessed, or cursed, based on how you look at it, by a magical love spot on his face
A
that
mole?
had the effect of charming the women he met.
A mole.
This caused trouble for him, as he unintentionally charmed his lord's bride, calling his loyalty into question. His pride as a loyal, honorable, gentlemanly knight
He wasn't
is what
loyal
motivates
anymore.
him, and his greatest regret in life was failing
Why
to
does it look
maintain
like
that
King
honor.
Vegeta?
As such, he remains completely loyal to his new master Cainith, and is outraged when his honorable battle with Saber is disrupted by Kiritsugu's deception. While we're talking about honor, we absolutely have to address the gathering between Artoria, Iskander, and Gilgamesh at the Greensboro
Dude,
mansion.
so much gold.
They decide to have a banquet of sorts.
I don't even like
regarding
yellow
their
gold that
status
much.
as kings. The three of them each have differing philosophies about kingship, but Saber is singled out for her beliefs. Both Gilga and Iskander fall on the selfish side, that a king should see themselves above their subjects, to live by boisterous example. Saber, on the other hand,
I think
felt
Gilgamesh
that a king
definitely
should
believes
always
that.
serve their people, always
That's fair,
sacrificing themselves
yes.
for the sake of their kingdom. For this, she is mocked. The
Of
men
course.
are insulted by the idea that Saber would use the Grail to redo her time as king. They affirm a king should not have regrets, as doing so would be an insult to all those who followed them.
That
Iskander
is a very,
especially
very
refuses
good
to
point.
acknowledge
Oh
Saber
my.
as king. The idea that she's fundamentally wrong about her kingship lingers within her until realizing just how tormented her best knight and friend, Lancelot, had become.
Lancelot and King Arthur
By
are
the end
friends.
of the Fourth Holy Grail War, after being forced to destroy the Grail as her final act as a servant, she declared she should not have been king in the first place, that another should have taken the throne instead. All in all, the Fourth Grail War was a horrific tragedy no matter how you look at it. By forcing Saber to destroy the Grail's vessel, Kiritsugu unintentionally released a wave of black ooze that engulfed a major part of Fuyuki City in flames. Given that this
black
was the
ooze
exact
caused
opposite
fire?
result from what he intended, he broke down in a panic to save anyone. Thankfully,
was he able to
his
save
desire
anyone?
To save another was realized when he saved Shiro by transferring into him Avalon's essence. Kiritsugu adopted Shiro, giving
Shiro
hope for the
Emiya,
future.
and then this
His
is
daughter,
that. That's
Ilya,
the scene
on
that was in
other
the
hand,
abridged when we
was
talk about
kept from
marbles.
him, since he betrayed the Ainsburn's trust by destroying the Grail. Worse yet,
She's
Hide
older
Kokumine
than
and
Emiya.
Gilgamesh are still at large, now with Kirei having woken to his darker inner desires. All of this sets up a lot of backstory and meaning for the original work.
Where's the
Fate
moon,
Stay
though?
Night, which we'll be talking about in my next video.
Do I
If you
react to the next
enjoyed
video?
this
Let me
and
know.
want to see more
I read
anime
every
lists,
comment.
reviews, discussions, and let's plays, please subscribe to Otaku Daikun.
Definitely subscribe.
Until next time,
He's approaching
celebrate
100,000
your fandom.
subscribers. Oh, it's a cat! Complimenting kitty clip. Aww. Oh, you're not drinking anything out of that straw anymore. Aww, the cat being so cute. Hopefully that song is not copywritten. But this was part one, the first 4 Grail Wars, which I believe somebody talked about the Grail Wars in the comment section of previous videos, like by the Giga videos that I did. I did 2 of those videos, also react to the abridged series. Love the abridged series. I That was honestly the biggest surprise ever when I put it the new anime reaction poll, and Fate Stay Night did not win and Chainsaw Man won by a lot over Fate Stay Night at Limited Blade Works. So it's beautiful. The bridge is hilarious. The lore is insane. It keeps getting bigger and bigger, and it keeps growing and growing. I don't think it's ever going to stop. But I look forward to learning more about Fate as I do more of these videos, and I hope to see you in them. I hope you are subscribed so you love future videos. I look forward to reading your comments, because I read every single one of them. I respond to a lot of them, so you know I'm actually reading them. But until the next video, take care, and cue the music.